Oh my god, it worked. It did it. I don't know. I don't know what y'all can see. Were you
I saw
watching?
it.
You saw the video.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we saw your sick
My sick
intro.
vid, my sick new intro.
Yeah.
My favorite part about making promo for stuff like this is I get to dig into my catalog of songs I made years ago with no use for them.
You should be uploading them to various sync libraries to see if they can generate any passive income.
Oh no, I'm actually allergic to passive income. What's up, Minshew? Yeah, we're loading up, baby. We're loading
Talk
up.
passive income, y'all.
We're jacking into the mainframe.
Yeah, welcome to Chill Touch. Here we're going to talk to you about how to generate passive income using drop shipping. And we're going to give you the basic tips today, but if you want to really understand how to make this work, you got to pay to join our monthly Discord.
It's time to jack into the grind set. Rise and grind, everybody. If people want to hop into our breakouts and our workshops, subscribe so that we can link and build.
Yeah, here at Chill Touch, we only have one real patron, and that's the fucking hustle, baby.
Yeah, dog.
We're all warlocks of the hustle.
That's the Cathustle.
Yeah. We're sworn to the Cathustle.
That's right. The Cathustle and Bussy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, you're right. I totally forgot. Fuck, I forgot to hard sell them on the course. I'm sorry, guys. I'm never gonna make it as a hustle culture influencer. So I guess I'll just go back to being a big old fucking nerd.
Yeah, we're hanging, we're slanging, we're banging. We're here with Sarah. We got Clint in the building. Oh dang, y'all! It's all popping off.
I'm wearing my robe this morning because tonight I'm participating in a very silly little bit show called Coachella for a Dying Boy at UCB. The premise is a dying boy, his last wish was to go to Coachella, but he was too sick to make it. So we're bringing Coachella to him. And my bit, I'm playing Mark Rebele, and I'm gonna have my Boss 505 loop station.
Incredible.
My bit is Mark Rebele can't stop being too horny in front of this dying child.
This is like an expanded version of that Mr. Show bit, Titanica. You ever seen
I don't know. No.
It's a boy who has been in a terrible fire, and he's dying in the bed, and his favorite metal band, Titanica, comes to visit him.
Hell yeah.
It's a classic. Just letting everybody know that I am 58 years old. Those are all my comedy references. Get into it.
You're not actually 58, are you?
No.
Listen, I'm knocking on the door of 58.
What does that mean? You're like 44.
Here's a little fun fact about me. I moved to Los Angeles as an old man, in that older than everybody else I knew. And I wouldn't tell anybody how old I was. I just told everybody I was 44. And that was a super fun game for about 15 years. And then I was 44, and fuck me.
4D4 years old.
Oh, 4D4 that's pretty young, actually.
Actually, quite young.
44 years old. That's how many magic missiles I am.
Yeah, a minor. Yeah.
How are y'all? What's going on? What's up, nerds? What's up, nerds in the chat? What
nerds in the chat watched the show last Sunday?
Oh yeah, we had some people on the Discord talk about watching the show, so I know some of y'all's did. I think last week, Ross, when you were gone, we settled on maybe we were trying to figure out what to call Chill Touch community members. You know, we were thinking of the Chill Touched.
The Touched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Chili Dogs has been thrown around.
Okay, I like all these. Yeah. Chili Dogs immediately evokes Sonic the Hedgehog to me.
Does it? Oh yeah, I guess
that's his favorite food.
Yeah,
I mean, if he likes one thing almost as much as going fast, it's delicious chili dogs.
Oh yeah,
he's got to go fast. He chooses chili dogs.
Right. He's cursed to go fast.
No tooth magic at the real dentist, unfortunately.
Alas.
It's a shame y'all kept interrupting me, so I couldn't explain all the intricate details of how tooth magic works. Unfortunately, it's all dissipated from my brain.
Yeah.
Well, we did film it. Don't
I'm
worry.
just
You can
kidding.
revisit
No. It wasn't filmed. There's no way for me to go
Don't
back.
interrupt me.
That's the number one rule of improv. Never interrupt me.
Yeah. But the show was a blast. It was really fun doing it with y'all, and I'm so glad that those who did hop into the live stream, thanks for watching. Show's great, and we'll eventually get to see the super important subplot from Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe next time we can delve into the all the stuff we missed.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. The whole time we were doing that, I was just pure Wheel of Time mode. I was Egwene in my head. Y'all didn't know it, but I was politically maneuvering the Sisters of the White Tower.
I knew because you were constantly pulling on your braid.
Yeah, no, that's naive, Clint. Oh. So close though, so close. Yeah, a little braid tugging.
I was like about to that's all in the past. The past is prologue. We did that show already.
Gone.
You Sarah, I want to tee you up because you actually have a show that you're scripting that is dropped that you're doing here in LA on the 6th of April. And I would like to learn more about it. And perhaps if people in our stream here are California natives, maybe they'll have a chance to see it. Or if you ever do it again, maybe they'll have a chance to see it.
Yeah.
What's the show that you're working on?
This show is also going to be live streamed as well. So
hot dogs.
So technically we're calling it later streamed because the theater doesn't have good enough Wi-Fi for live streaming. But the show I'm doing is called What is a Woman? A One Woman ? Show. And it's God, I wish I had a pitch for you, but every day it changes what it's going to be. Clint, I do want to tell you, no, I still haven't written the script for the show.
Pen has not touched paper.
No. Okay, the problem is I've written a bunch of scripts for the show, actually.
Okay.
It's just like every time I sit down to write a script and I realize that like the topic of, all right, let me slow down. Audience, for the uninitiated, for the thus far untouched, my show is Infinite Things. The title.
It's a great value for your ticket.
Yeah. Most shows are about one thing. Most shows have a clear premise.
These tickets are literally priceless because this show's
oh God. I pitched the title of the show as a joke. Like when Laser Weber reached out to me and was like, I'm doing this trans theater festival. Do you have anything you'd like to submit? And I said, yes, I've always wanted to do a one-person show. This is a title I thought was funny, so I pitched it as a title. It was a reference to the Matt Walsh documentary, What is a Woman? But mostly it was a joke, and I didn't have any intention for it. And then I spent months like thinking about more than normal. I'm always thinking about gender and stuff, but like more than normal, trying to actively think about it. Reading my Judith Butler, reading my feminism, reading my philosophies, and also doing way too much research into fascist propaganda. And the more I thought and the more I learned, the more I had to say. And like all of a sudden an hour was way too short. I know for a lot of people, like the idea of being on stage by yourself for an hour talking about something is very intimidating. But every time I've written a script and I've tried to run through it and I hit the hour and I'm like, fuck, I didn't even get to any of the shit I wanted to really talk about. So that's a pitch. Come to my show. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be about anything. And I'm not going to get to the stuff that matters to me. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
The hard sell.
Yeah. But I did. Okay. So yesterday, literally every day, what I want to talk about pivots. But yesterday, and then I think this will be of interest to you and this stream. Yesterday, I did a version of it, the most recent version, with my director, Raft, who is an amazing like comedy director out here, and also one of my girlfriend's partners. And they helped me a lot. We were really trying to narrow it down. What am I talking about? And they kept pushing me to be like, you're saying so many cool, interesting things, but I'm getting lost trying to follow it. Like, what is your main point? What's like the thesis you can return to throughout the show? And part of the issue is that I don't have one, because the point of the show is that just shit is complicated, and like embracing the complexity and the nuance is like what we need to be doing right now in the face of an anti-intellectual fascist movement that is trying to force us to like enter their arena of oversimplified propaganda. So like I'm really resistant to the idea of simplifying what I want to say in this show. However, I understand the wisdom of their point. So I was trying to figure it out. And I think basically my point, hi Shannon, uh, it all comes down to like, what is a game? To what extent is anything we do socially, culturally, to what extent should we understand these more as games than as anything else? And it gets to what Clinton Ross, we were talking uh, yesterday off stream about this stuff, but that conversation was great. So, guys, what is a game? Can you tell me?
Nope.
Yeah,
Great.
I mean, I think, I mean, you're onto something. I too, I mean, in the way that anything that you kind of become interested in and obsessed with becomes a key suddenly that allows you to
Right.
kind of unlock your whole world. Like, I know that a lot of people like you and I say are improvisers. We went through improv classes. I think there's a point where everybody who going through where a lot of
Welcome,
people going
Clancy.
hey Clancy where a lot of people going through improv classes, because it has this kind of undergirding philosophy of yes and how you create things collaboratively. There's a moment where you're like,
And Russ,
everything is this.
this is beautiful. You're a little out of focus. You want to do
I
a
don't
throw back?
fucking care. I don't
Okay,
care.
okay, okay.
Like,
Great.
He's
Great.
getting intellectually romantic, so the focus softened.
Yeah. The focus softens to accommodate my
There we go.
my
Okay.
ethereal points.
Okay.
But
We're yes anding.
yeah. That suddenly that becomes like a way for you're seeing it everywhere. And I think probably because we're all like game pilled, that's another
hashtag
frame to see the world. But it's I think the realm of the symbolic is useful, and that is a good filter through which to kind of see everything. And yes, everything is in a way a game. I mean, I have less of a fluency with the sort of philosophers and theorists that you're talking about, the Judith Butlers and all, but in the way that they'll describe, correct me if I'm wrong here, the way that they'll describe many aspects of culture as being historically and culturally contingent and to use a well-worn saw, constructed in some way, like that's a way of kind of rephrasing that is that these are games, like the way in which our culture presents all forms of like social interaction are games. Corporations are games, governments are games, and we submit to the rules with our and we either agree to play them, sometimes at our peril. And I think that's a useful frame to talk about things, and it's certainly one that I think about a lot, because of course I find myself playing these kinds of games all the time.
You're game pilled.
I'm game pilled, as you said.
I so I was reading a lot. There's a philosopher I really enjoy, current philosopher named Tien Nguyen, who's a professor at University of Utah, I think, and he writes a lot about the philosophy of games, and like specifically, he just wrote a cool book last year, the year before, that's all about like the philosophy of games, with a focus on gamification and like what does that mean, like via what is gamification accomplishing, by what mechanisms does it work, and like what are the dangers of it. And his whole thing is, and it's not just him, like he's working on a corpus like every thinker does, but games are, his basic definition of a game is like an artificial set of values and or rules that create like a simplified space where by entering into this space, it becomes easier to understand like ourselves as agents. Our motivations become clear and defined. The mechanisms by which we can pursue those motivations are clear and defined. And gamification has enabled like corporations and governments and all kinds of things to basically hack whatever it is in the human psychology that makes that so appealing to us, which I would argue is like a fundamental like repulsion from our true existential position as like meandering meaningless creatures in an irrational universe. Like we want to enter into these play spaces. Hello. Thank you so much. Oh my god.
Sorry,
See,
everybody.
that's
Hey,
my
Willa,
girlfriend Willa. And
Look
look,
to your heart.
this is like the kind of girlfriend I
Oh
have.
my
She just
God.
brings me food like this
Just
all
a
the
straight
time.
up like getting the chef's table plate.
Literally
like, out of
every
nowhere.
day.
Crazy.
Anyway, like
My wife is watching this, and I have to tell you, she hasn't brought me anything.
Hi, Megan.
I don't know if you felt the palpable judgment of my wife as she walked by.
Like a game creates a space where we can enter together and like share a mutually understood set of values and rules that enable us to feel like clear agents and not meandering existential wisps. Companies have been using that to like get their workers to be more productive, or like everyone's always doing it. You know, when someone's obsessed with getting their daily step count in, they're turning health into a game. When someone's obsessed with like calorie intake, water they're drinking, that's a game. When someone knows that I have to say 100 Hail Marys, that's a game, right? Like we're giving ourselves simple rules. The potential dangers of gamification are that they always inherently like build in a value system. And when we're allowing companies to gamify our lives, whether that's step counts, Duolingo, etc., we no longer are the ones choosing which value systems like we're building in. So if you play Duolingo, all of a sudden it's the creators of Duolingo who are telling you what you value about language acquisition, but it becomes addicting because of the inherent like dopamine cycle of game. But are you actually learning language, or are you just enjoying the play of like playing, learning language? Does 10,000 steps a day actually have anything to do with health? Or is it a way for you to reduce your fear and anxieties about being a healthy physical human body and like ignore all the complicated shit because we're actually hyper complex organisms that nobody really fully understands? And you get to focus on this one narrow thing where it's like, well, I can do that. I can get 10,000 steps. I can make number go up, hit line, and then I can feel content and not scared of all the stuff I don't actually understand about my body. So those are games we enter willingly. The question I've been pondering is gender, capitalism, government, as you mentioned. On the one hand, I also want to describe them as games because the mechanisms are clearly so similar. It's a set of artificial rules, artificial values. In capitalism, we have a point system called money. We want to make line go up. There's like different skill trees you can access to do it. Like it's clear that capitalism is game-like. But can something be a game if it's not something that players enter into consensually and are free to leave? And what do we call it if it's not a consensual system?
Just in terms of limiting the term game, which has become so all-encompassing in the last 90 seconds, I would love to find another word than game for systems that we do are entered into non-consensually and are unable to leave.
Right, exactly. And I haven't been able to find a good word for that. I would love to hear y'all's suggestions, but like capitalism is a game we're born into and that we can't escape. And like so much of why I want to call it a game is because my whole life, I was a weird kid who had like just a visceral, intuitive, like revulsion towards arbitrary rules, or feeling like I was forced to like participate in arbitrary constructed rituals that I didn't agree with. And my whole life, as a result, arguments with my dad, who's wonderful, but my dad being like, well, at some point you have to play the game, right? We've all probably been told, oh, there you go. There you
Look at
go.
you.
Yeah, now we can both enjoy our breakfasts together.
Lay sigh.
Right? So what do we call them? Like when you're talking about capitalism, it can make sense to call it like a prison, maybe. Oh my God, Zach, you joined at the exact right time.
So we're getting heavy here.
Time, baby.
We're talking about the philosophy of games and whether or not something can truly be considered a game if it's not entered into consensually by all parties. And if we're going to set aside games for consensual enterprises between buds, what do we call capitalism? Because it's clearly game-like, but it is a non-consensual like imposition.
Well, what about like Jigsaw, when Jigsaw's like play a game?
Would you like to play a game? I've had that line like running through my head nonstop for the last 24 hours. Like, and like that makes me want to call it torture. Like a non-consensually entered game-like system maybe should be considered torture. I know capitalism can feel like that to people who are losers of it.
Is the question like, do games have to be fun? If it's not fun, is it a game?
No, it's not about fun. This is about consent.
Are you sure? It might just not be about fun, because
that's a separate question. I think that equally legitimate. But I'd love to hear your take on fun.
I think if it's not consenting, then it's probably not fun. So I think fun might sort of cover the whole umbrella. Is it? I guess, but then I guess you get into the sort of like binary of if something is not fun for you, does that still mean it's not a game because fun is so personal?
Right. Like, I think there are some games that if I run up to you and I say, tag, you're it.
Then you're playing tag.
I'm playing tag, but we aren't playing tag unless you like decide, okay, I'm it. And you start chasing me back, right?
Right.
But it doesn't even have to be fun. Like we play a lot of games that aren't fun, right? Like people
only play fun games.
There's like, think of
Monopoly is a game, but nobody thinks it's fun.
I know a lot of people that like roll hard for Monopoly. I mean, not me, but people love Monopoly, Clint.
They're sick.
I agree.
Or think of like ritual things that people participate in via like religion. Like Ross, we were talking about the idea that some people enjoy fasting or like rituals of prayer or whatever. I would consider those like usually games. Like people choose to go to church and they choose to do these like rituals and these things, and they're not having fun, but I do think what they derive from the game is meaning and purpose, and like a carving off, like it's a wall that the game provides you a shell with which to ignore our inherent existential instability.
I think a lot of people would take issue with the labeling of religious practice as a game.
Oh yeah, but a lot of people would be wrong, Zach. But please tell me why you think that.
Because I think game sort of implies a level of abstraction removed from like reality.
You don't think religions have a level of abstraction removed from reality?
For me, it does, but not for the people that worship.
Yeah. So I think, Ross, you look like your thoughts here.
This is like a deeper level of buy-in. This is like almost what we were chatting about yesterday. I just wanted to call attention to some stuff in the chat. Like you're asking about a different name for what you're describing as a non-consensual game. I think Clancy is pitching just culture, just straight up culture might be that.
Right.
And also there was another interesting somebody was Firen. I actually don't know how to pronounce that.
It's Firen, rhymes with siren.
Is thinking like about the difference between a piece and a player. Are you being played or are you the player? Because a game like capitalism, there's the game in quotes like capitalism, you certainly find yourself being you're the thimble in Monopoly one day, and one day you're the hotel owner. Those people are having different experiences of the game.
And I want to be clear, like, yes, I'm using game in a very like broadened sense.
Yeah.
You missed the start of the conversation, Zach, but I'm
Yeah, I
specifically
just
like,
dropped in. I was like, oh, this was like a cool podcast, and Sarah has her philosophy hat on.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
but because this is all tying back to Sarah's show, which she was describing as being as kind of like trying to grapple with this very complicated and big concept, and being resistant to nailing things down to these concrete certainties, because that is so much of what our current fascist culture is all about. And so it's having to try to find these a frame to put on this
Yeah.
concept to focus it. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
Sarah was saying something, God, maybe like a year ago to me that really stuck with me, and she was talking about how like all of these like labels that we put on things, people, whatever, like we do it because they're useful in sort of like the immediate, but they're not useful past a point. And when they stop being useful,
Wow.
they start being like really, really
Thank you so
detrimental.
much for the follow, Angel Magnet. Yeah, no, that, I mean, okay, so that's,
But that stuck with me a lot because like we use this, I mean, we use it in improv too, is this idea of like boundaries as use, right? Like if I tell you to label 10 things, that's harder than if I say name 10 animals, because your brain likes to function with restraint. It's how we like filter information in the world. But then at a certain point, you know, individuals very rarely, if ever, feel like 100% aligned with any given label at any given time.
Yeah.
Like if someone was like, I guess since we're talking about Sarah's show, if someone was like, Zach, like you're a man, what does it mean to be a man? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like that's nothing. Like that's different for every single person that's ever called themselves a man in the history of, you know, wherever. So
Right.
like it's, you know, it's useful for a couple like very, very specific use cases, and then outside of that, it's like, what are you getting from it?
Right. And this gets at like the fundamental problem of, it's just like language is
Right.
itself a game space. It's like not one that, it doesn't have an author. There's no game designer who created language, unless you're talking about like Esperanto or Elvish. But like English is a game space. And in general, we all kind of agree on the rules. And then there are some cases where you have to put your rules lawyer hat on. And like, what is a woman? The driving question of this show, which is a stupid question. Like, I also want to put that out there. It's a stupid question. The only
But that's
reason
why it's funny, right?
Mhm.
Like,
right. Yeah. But it is a stupid question, but it also is a question that's very appealing and convincing to a particular like authoritarian mindset who might be drawn in by fascist propaganda. Like that's kind of where I'm going. But I so I have a bunch of different parts of like game in the way I'm thinking about it with reference to woman or gender. One is like, because also I'm thinking about fascist propaganda and been watching so much Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and Matt Walsh and even Donald Trump and like all
Oof.
these Republicans, right? And I, at the same time, been talking to all these sort of liberal friends of mine in LA who are like definitely like not MAGA, hate that shit, but also aren't as like deeply obsessed with far right culture as I am. So to them, they look at this, they look at the victory of Donald Trump, they look at like, how are these people supporting these clearly awful humans? Like, how do they listen to these guys talk and like think it's fun? And I think a mistake that a lot of liberals make is watching the way a Ben Shapiro or a Matt Walsh or a Donald Trump argues and trying to understand that as an argument in the sense of like good faith, truth seeking, communal understanding building philosophy. When in fact, that's not what they're doing. Like Ben Shapiro up on a stage talking to college students is not arguing. What he's doing is play arguing. It's the difference between watching like a boxing match and watching a wrestling match. And people love wrestling. They know it's fake. The wrestlers know it's fake. Everyone involved knows it's fake. But as long as the kayfabe is maintained and everyone agrees to treat it as real, wrestling is fun. And that's what people love about Ben Shapiro, right? They're not actually convinced by his points. They already agree with Ben Shapiro about whatever. And what they care about is the kayfabe play debate that he engages in. And as long as he maintains it and they maintain it, as long as Donald Trump maintains it, as long as all these MAGA people all share a commitment to the kayfabe of what we're doing is legitimate politic, then they all get to continue playing that game together. And what it enables them to do, in my opinion, like games always have a purpose. They're always hiding something, distracting us from something, enabling us to simplify something that's unpleasant. Like that's what makes them fun, is like they're not real. And I think for a lot of MAGA people, Ben Shapiro types, there's like obviously a million different psychologies playing into it because there's millions of different people. I think some of them like getting to pretend to be smart via Ben Shapiro. Like a person makes an argument they can't understand, that might make them feel bad about themselves. Ben Shapiro shuts down the argument, destroys this feminist whatever. Via Ben Shapiro, like I don't have to feel bad about not understanding this argument because it's a stupid, silly argument that's dismissed with an easy point by Ben Shapiro. Or if I have a bunch of authoritarian fascist impulses that run directly counter to all of the American values that I was like supposedly brought up with, you know, I was going around after 9/11 and talking about how important it was to defend freedom and all these Islamic fundamentalists are bad. And now I want to be a Christian fundamentalist, theocratic authoritarian. The game of right-wing politics and pseudo debate, the kayfabe, lets me ignore that. I pretend to be participating in a true democratic process as long as we don't look too closely and we all maintain it. And you might be like, you didn't say the word woman or gender at all in any of that long rant, but it's all related. That's the fucking problem. Anyway, I'll stop talking for a bit and I'll eat my steak.
So at what point in your show are you at this point in the argument? Is this act one?
Yeah, put the steak down.
Yeah. All I hear is the steak plate.
My steak will never be eaten.
Oh my God. That's
Willa brought it to me.
Will is chefing in the kitchen.
It's 10:40 in the morning.
I know.
What is happening over there?
She's always does this, but she also has a girl over that she's impressing.
She's turning into the bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are we in my show? Fuck if I know.
I mean, do you want to continue talking philosophy, or shall we switch to dramaturgy?
This is a free form conversation that anyone can take anywhere.
Oh, okay. Then I have a question.
Great.
Do you guys know anything
It's going to be
about
about anime. Go ahead.
When in haiku they hit the volleyball so hard, can you actually hit the volleyball that hard in real life?
It's a great question.
Here's the question. So there's this LA artist who I love, called the site is called Wizard of Barge. The shirt I was wearing in the show is from him. I think him. I'm not sure. But then they had on their website this thing of tokens for Magic the Gathering. And I bought them because I liked the way they looked. But I don't actually play Magic the Gathering, so I don't understand what they are. So I was wondering if you could sort of help me. But they look like this. So there's like, they're holographic, so it's going to be hard.
You froze for a second on me.
Oh, wow.
But like, this is a holographic card that just says bird. One word.
Yeah.
Oh, is my screen mirroring for you?
No, we can see it. Oh, yeah, it's mirrored for us, but we can read it.
We see it. I can't contribute to this because like I haven't played Magic the Gathering since I was in
Clint,
ninth grade.
This?
I can talk.
How do tokens work?
Yeah.
When engaging in Magic the Gathering, there are a number of cards that generate additional things that need to be represented in the game. Like, and those frequently have types. Like, a goblin broodmother every turn creates an additional goblin token, right?
Okay.
And you can represent those with any number of things. This is the fanciest version of that, where you can say, like, I have a special deck and a thing that is generating bird tokens, and now I've got these fancy holographic birds.
Or I got beast, and that's 3/3.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, so those are hyper specific. So generally, I'm deeply outside the Magic world. Although it's worth mentioning, I might be rich somewhere in a garage in Michigan. I might have a bunch of like second set, like not alpha, but like Magic cards that might be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And why am I not making that my career?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I should hang up now and be flying to Michigan to go through my dad's garage.
I agree. I recently, not recently, like a couple years ago, went and retrieved from my parents' home my Pokemon card binder from childhood. And yes, it does have a shadowless Charizard in it. And yes, it does have my grubby little child markings all over it. So it's probably like worth like $1,000 now. It's not in like awful condition, but it's not bad.
Yeah, everything I own is heavily played. Like there's nothing.
Look, like because you're not a psychopath, right?
Right.
Adults collect things. Children collect things, but play with them while they're collecting.
Yeah.
There's probably kids out there that like immediately opened their first pack of Pokemon cards and put them into like sleeves and protectors, but I didn't know any of those kids. I'm sure they exist. Respect to them. They're probably very rich now.
It's not me because my Pokemon cards have all disappeared, unfortunately, because I also had a bunch of those first gen Pokies.
Maybe they'll turn up.
Clint, what was your dramaturgy point?
Oh, I was simply going to suggest, so because these definitions, you're frequently lifting something up and saying this is a construct and thus not real. It's a thing that has to be agreed on either consensually or non-consensually. As you lift things up and knock them down, you need a sound cue that just plays the guitar lick from Man, I Feel Like a Woman to cue to the audience.
Yeah.
And then that's you wiping that particular argument away so you can barrel forward. That's my dramaturgical suggestion for your show.
I would call that a directorial solution, Clint.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
but I wanted to speak not just to the audience's like experience of it, but how Sarah can feel that she can, once an argument has been lifted, she doesn't have to keep it on stage and live with it for forever. She can move on.
Mm-hmm.
It's true
For her benefit and the audience's.
Yeah,
Let's go, girls.
That's it.
I hear that.
I will also say, Sarah, because I'm dealing with this deeply in my work life, you doing that means your show will become unclearable and can never be filmed.
There's 100% no chance that I'm going to use any copyrighted music. My show will be unclearable and unpresentable because of all the copywritten clips of fascists that I'm using.
There you go.
Are you going to have like over the shoulder like clips in your show?
I got some clips.
Okay.
I got some clips. I got a lot of clips. I got too many clips. I want to force y'all to watch them with me today because a drowning person likes to scramble for any nearby person and drag them under with them. But
let me be the person outside the boat and said, how about instead of us both drowning in clips that are going to make us all feel bad, we don't watch any of them?
Yeah.
That would be sort of my counter.
I'm gonna take that suggestion, but not because it's like wise or smart, but only because if I start playing these clips, the stream might get taken down for copyright.
Fair.
Hey, look, if that's what it takes.
Either way,
if that's why you want to get out of the boat, that's great for me.
Either way, you're not freezing while clinging to the door anymore. You're on the life raft with Kathy Bates.
So Other game thoughts I had, because it's all like kind of one big swirling mass in my head at the moment. But Zach, I've been thinking a lot about LARP,
Okay.
and I've been thinking a lot about why, like, you LARP, we LARP, we've been to the same LARP.
I LARP, we LARP, we are
LARP.
We are
LARP.
not me.
Zach.
Yeah.
Oh, no, okay.
Not yet.
You're cool.
Sarah and I LARP. Ross and Clint are too scared.
I have LARPed.
Clint's LARPed before.
I bounced off it at that time in my life.
That's totally fair. Also, it was like a parlor, like vampire LARP that you were. Am I remembering the story correctly?
Mm-hmm.
It was a little masquerade.
There was an intensity to some of the folks in that. I've done 2 LARP experiences. One in high school, I attended a college was doing its own LARP, and it rained really hard, and I got stuck in a tent with some not real pagans, collegiate pagans. Nice. And I will just always remember that they all went, sun God, he's the only one God. Rah, rah.
Oh, Bretta.
And then I was like, I've never thought of myself as cool, but I'm too cool for this tent. I'm going to go out in the road.
I think that's fair. I mean, I do think that, there is sorry, what's your question, Sarah?
So my question is, why is it bad when someone at the LARP, and for context, listeners, viewers, this is a big LARP. It's like 500 to 700 people. It's in its own little town space that they rent out for the weekend. And it's considered very, very, very bad etiquette for someone to talk out of character without clearly separating themselves from the game space for a particular reason. It's very bad etiquette for someone to have a cell phone out. And my question is why? In your opinion, Zach, why is that?
I don't know that I would categorize it as very, very bad, but I will tell you the argument against it for whatever reason. So I think what a lot of people go to it for is a thing that you hear Disney Imagineers talk about all the time, which is a highly immersive space, right? Like when done correctly, the joy of being at a live event like this, as opposed to sitting around with your friends playing D&D, which is also great. Clearly, we love that. But the thing that this has that doesn't is a level of real world immersion, which is to say you feel like you are there, not just in your imagination, but you see it. And the people that go to these things put a lot of effort into creating physical spaces that feel transportative, costumes that they've worked really, really hard on, all of that. Like Sarah was saying, I have this memory of this place where we LARP has this giant, it's like a standing Ren Fair set. Picture that. It's just never taken down. And new characters come in at night. So the first time that I'm seeing a lot of these places is it's already twilight and there's not a lot of electrical light there. Your eyes just sort of adjust after a while, but it's very, very dark. And my character was coming in and they do a sort of part of the game where your character is introduced, and I'm walking with these people past this silhouette of this giant castle, and part of my brain just melts. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Cut to later in the daytime, looking at that same castle, and it's cardboard and kind of looks like shit. But at night, when all of the rough edges are off, it's really transportative and really cool. You have people walking around with lanterns. Maybe you can't tell that they're wearing Nikes, or that the tent is not quite genre or whatever. And all of those things compound for an experience that is more transportative, or more easily transportative, where I'm not constantly being reminded that I'm 1 mile in any direction away from a Chipotle, right? That's I find when I'm at these things that I don't look at my phone for days and a half at a time. And that has a restorative effect on my body and my soul. And
It's-
it's like I love like fantasy worlds so much when I escape to them via Ross being an incredible DM, or like books that I love, or video games. Like all of that stuff brings me a lot of joy. This does that in a way that scratches parts of my brain that those don't, or were just like novel. Not to say that like I would fall apart if I didn't have it, but it's it's a flavor I really enjoy of that. So when people are like, when I'm in a moment with a bunch of my friends and we've all worked hard on costumes and we're whatever, and then someone pulls out their phone and the backdrop is like Adventure Time, it doesn't ruin it for me, because I'm like pretty good at like dropping back in. Like if someone needs to, so sorry, a very long-winded way to answer your thing. Like
no, I'm loving it. Yeah.
In general, and you will notice this, Sarah, when we LARP together, like we drop out of character and talk as ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes we play characters that are aspects of ourselves that allow us to talk as ourselves when we are our characters, which is, I couldn't do it any other way, because I don't want to pretend to be someone else for that long. I just want to be me. I want to be me through a fantasy lens. So yes, I'm a professional. That's why I can drop into the LARP space.
No, but I think genuinely it's like, it's the fact that you are an improv professional, and that like I find that our friends who are best at doing that dropping in and out are also the ones who love improv. Like they're great at just play. Like improv is a constant dropping in and out.
Can I do a really quick, interesting say? I had not a fight, but like a disagreement with a lot of LARP people about like LARP characters.
LARP
This
drama.
This is a very like personal thing. But what they were saying was like, when I play a character, I am totally different from myself, and none of that can be reflected back on me, and it makes me angry when people associate things that my character did with me, the person. And while I think that is like totally legit, it's also contrary to how I know the skill of acting to work for me as a person. So I was like, look, I'm not saying that you are like a murderous. So there's a culture in this game that are effectively the bad guys. Like they're all the bad guys. They all
They're
come
kind of
from
cannibal Nazi.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking about them, but yes, there's them as well. There's like a cannibal culture who are like, they're like swamp monsters. They hang out in the swamp. They're all about bones and sacrifice and all that stuff, and that's fine. So they like death. They treat death kind of callously, like they kill a lot. Blah 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 blah. They would be labeled as like psychopaths in the world that we live in today, and I was like, okay, so when you're playing that character, what you are effectively doing is running you, the human being, through a fantasy filter of like, if I was this person and lived in this place and grew up here, would do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, no, I'm removed from it. And what I was saying is like, well, you can't be removed from it, because you're the brain.
They're all coming from in there.
You're the idea engine. So like you can't fully separate you out. So on the other hand, I understand why people get angry when someone does something that they wouldn't like, because it's like, yes, you the character are a monster. We can have that level of like disambiguation, but you the player made the character do these things. And I think that that's where people get a little bit like, I don't know. I just think that's interesting. Interesting. I think that anytime someone is playing a character, they are running it through the filter of themselves. And people really disagreed with me in that on LARP. And I was like, I don't think that says anything bad about you. I think that's the fear. I think people are like, well, I don't want this to reflect badly on me. Like, I don't want people to think that I am this. And I'm like, no. I don't think that. I don't think that you would ever do any of these things. I think you're doing fantasy game play time. But like,
I think there's I have so much I want to say to that, but Ross and Clint, I've been talking like 10,000,000% of this stream. So do y'all have a response?
I do have a thought about that particular.
Yeah, same. Go for it, Clint.
Because for me, like, go ahead and become immersed, play your character, but and no moral judgment on your character's actions if they are in world and in character.
Yeah.
However, acknowledge that you are playing with other people, and when your actions make the game less fun for everybody, and then you say, "But that's what my character would do." Fuck you. Like,
100%, because like
Yeah.
you're not in a vacuum, right?
correct. It can be fun to be the asshole. It can be fun to be the bad guy. It can be fun to sometimes, if it makes the story better, people like taking the hit, right? And you can be the agent who does that. But like, again, if your fun makes everybody else's fun like diminish significantly,
Then you, the player, are doing a bad job, regardless
Correct.
of what the character is doing.
yep.
Certainly. Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like I feel like, Clint, you and I played in a game of Call of Cthulhu, maybe just a home game a couple weeks ago. And I was playing a sort of like, I don't know, like grizzled ex-cop kind of character. And there was a moment in that game where as this character did something in the game that was like, that made another player at the table, I feel like it was in a sense like the person recoil a little bit at how aggressive that this character was being with an NPC.
Yeah.
Like putting the screws in a creepy way to a NPC in this game just around the table. And it pushed a button in me where I was like, hey, and I had that sense of like, that's not me doing that. That's this guy doing that. But at the same time, this is like, I think I was a little ashamed because I didn't want to be that guy ever at the table. But I also but I will take ownership. Yes, these are not separate entities. You are always in control to some extent. Things slip out for all of us in any of these situations, but like these are, you contain multitudes. Part of this, like, not to go down the psychotherapy tangent, but you're part of the fun of these games is like not like in a cavalier and glib way doing toxic things, but maybe exploring a shadowy side of yourself.
Sure.
That's why I liked the game like Vampire the Masquerade, for example, because part of that game is becoming a monster, is like not just the horror of the world around you, but the horror of what your character becomes capable of, is part of the thrill.
And I think to not acknowledge that is to play the game wrong. Honestly.
Yeah. And
right.
And that involves, of course, a lot of like consent and comfort of everybody playing. Yeah, it sucks when you do, and I just bring that up because like I felt that it sucks when you feel like you've done something that crossed somebody's boundary, and you get defensive, and you're like, no, I'm not trying to. I really wasn't trying to hurt your feelings or do anything gross or weird. That was me trying to not to fall back on the cliche of like it's what my character would do, but that was me trying to like embody this guy who is a complicated character. And going a little
and add
too
some
far,
reality
probably.
to the setting that we were all agreeing that we were sharing,
right? Because that stuff
like,
can be
and
very
in the moment, I don't think
rewarding, right? Like that's why we don't all roll characters that are like, and I always like, you want to roll complicated characters that do complicated things, and you don't want all of that behavior reflected back at you, Ross, the person, because we understand that's not what's going on.
This is where it gets to, Zach, what you were talking about earlier about like, is the better lens fun versus consent? Either way, like when you enter a game like Vampire the Masquerade, or Clint and I just played a game of Cult, which is like an evil game for monsters, like you all enter it and you all usually have a discussion beforehand and you kind of consent, like what are off limits for me and what are not, like where can we go, what kinds of these narratives will be fun for each of us and which ones will make it not fun. And like with anything, like anytime you're negotiating a group activity, like we think we have a shared understanding, and then sometimes we run into areas where like that actually was fuzzy and never made explicit, and maybe because not all the players were aware exactly of what would end up not being fun.
Oh, sure. But sometimes like a button of mine gets pushed that I did not know I had. And so like, it's always a give and take of like, no one is asking anyone to be perfect. Everyone is just asking everyone to like sort of be
And-
willing to improve and change at any time if something
Right.
is like weird. And I
So
think as long as
the reason I think like this stuff is interesting, these lessons we can learn from D&D, LARP, whatever, like when we run into these areas, what they have to say about gender to ultimately tie it back to the thing I haven't actually talked about yet. I think that when people are getting mad when you call them out at LARP and say like, well, I'm not saying like you're bad. I'm saying like your character did something bad and that's a reflection on you, right?
And to be clear,
Like,
Sarah, I didn't call anyone out at LARP. This was a
it's
discussion
a theoretical conversation.
at Discord later. People shouldn't be calling each other out at LARP. At LARP,
Sorry,
just
I
go
meant
have a good time.
like in the realm of LARP,
Just-
and not
just-
even a call out.
I'm just
but-
protecting my IP, Sarah. That's all I'm doing. Continue.
Yeah, when you were a total asshole to that poor 15-year-old.
Oh, I did.
We all think Zach's a real sweetie pie, huh? Well, now
Now
the
that
truth comes out.
Yeah, here's my veil. Whoop.
When you
Horrible.
remind people that the characters they play at LARP are fundamentally like driven by and authored by them, like it's not something separable from their minds, that removes from them the like kayfabe, the illusion they were operating under, that like this is a space that's consequenceless for me. This is a space that says nothing about me, and I can do anything I want here, and I can indulge in all of the whatever the psychoanalytic shadows that I'm scared of in myself in real life, and not reflect on it further. Like I both get to play with those shadow elements and
not think about what that means. That's so
right?
interesting.
And,
yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I think it's similar to when someone pulls out a phone or is walking down LARP Street with a Chipotle bag. It's a violation of a shared etiquette of kayfabe. It's like I don't want to be reminded in this set aside shared sacred game time that it isn't real. Like part of what makes it fun is being able to commit so hard to pretending it's real and acting as if, right?
Yeah.
So just to quickly finish my point here.
Sorry.
I think gender is the exact same thing. Like, why do people get mad at trans people? Like, what is it about trans people that fucks with people's minds so much? And I think it's a very similar phenomenon where like everyone is playing this game of gender. That and maybe we want to use a different word because we're born into it. We're playing culture of gender. We're playing roles of man and woman, and those become deeply important because this is like game doesn't mean frivolous. Like everything that matters to us, I would argue, is game. Like meaning only derives from game, but people don't like being reminded that something that they're engaged in is a game. Unless you're someone like us who loves play.
Well, I was going to say, Sarah, it's so interesting because I feel like at LARP specifically, at least the one that we have attended, is I see so much exploration of transness, so much exploration of queerness. Yes. Well. Waited a good long time, and now
the heel turn we were all waiting for.
Yeah, fully.
But it's
like really wonderful to see people, whether they know that they're actively doing it or not. And I think a lot of them do. I think a lot of people find the LARP space is like, it's basically a big sandbox where we're agreeing like you have to roll a new you to be in this space. Do you want that you to use the same pronouns as the one that you've been using your whole life? You don't? Do you want to think about why that might be? Here's like a danger-free place to do that.
Yeah.
Where if you are not a person who has ever worn a dress and you want to wear a dress all weekend, no one is going to bat an eye here. And I think that's beautiful. And I will also say that the community of people that are doing this are not necessarily the people that I would think would be as chill with living in that kind of space. And they are sort of like there's a lot of active military at LARP, which is not a place that we think of as being particularly forgiving and inclusive. and like to a person, this space, at least from the outside, and I guess sort of from the inside a little bit, I think the fact that there is such a large queer community, that there is such a huge trans community within the game, is sort of a statement to the the character of that community.
To be clear, I wasn't criticizing that LARP at
No,
all.
No, I know, but I
Yeah.
think you are right. I think that outside of that space, I think that part of what makes transness uncomfortable to people is that, like, you're in a way looking at a mirror. You're in a way being like, oh, hold on, do I need to think about who I am truly, regardless of like the labels that have been put on the physical body that I was born into?
Right.
Does, like, might I be something else? And if so, what does that, like, thinking about those are like big questions that we do not
and it comes from multiple angles with gender, because some people spend their whole lives suffering as a result of abiding by gender norms. Like, for men who don't live up to masculine ideals, that causes, even if they're not trans, like, that causes a lot of suffering. Like, look at how successful the manosphere is at dragging in teenage boys just by appealing to their insecurity in their role as man, right?
Right.
The fact that Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg are the richest fucking people in the world, and what they have to do still after that is go on and, like, be the most performatively masculine guys they can. Jeff Bezos becoming jacked, Zuckerberg becoming a literal MMA fighter. It's these are roles that cause difficulty with people. And what a trans person does is represents to them this breach of kayfabe. It's like the breaking the immersion of LARP and saying, hey, by the way, that role that's caused you so much suffering that you've worked so hard to achieve, to fit into, or failed to and been sad about,
it's
like,
fake.
that's fake.
Yeah.
That's a choice. That's a role
That's a
you
choice.
committed to that you didn't have to. And that
People, it's
pisses
the
people
unwillingness
off.
of people people always want to describe it. They cling desperately to these things as being things they are and not things they participate in.
Right.
And like, which is odd, because like there's that you see online people describing what you're describing, like Bezos hulking out, the MMA Zuckerberg, the surgeries that Elon Musk has undergone as a form of gender affirming care. That they are attempting to participate more deeply in society's performance of masculinity, and though they are so resistant and terrified to actually describe it in those terms.
And I think that, like, we get
not
into, like,
fun. Well, it is fun. Some people have, like, a whole trad wife, like, dom sub, husband, wife, Christianity fetish lifestyle, like lifestyle BDSM kink that they live out. But a lot of people suffer under it. Sorry.
For sure. And also, like, to be clear, like, I want to be strong and look like that's good for me too, but not because it has any sort of, like, connection to what I think, like, a man should be, right? Like, that's not useful. It's like, I want to be strong because, like, Zach, think it'd be cool to look that way. And I'm sure
it can be because you think that's what a man should look like, right? Like, when I go to LARP and I'm playing a celestial warrior, I want to play celestial warrior well. I want to lean into my role in that game space. That's fun. Like, games are fun, games are meaningful and real. And, like, someone who wants to, like, be really good at playing the role man in the game gender, that's not a problem if they're aware of what they're doing ultimately as gameplay. Because if they're not, then they start forcing it on other people. Then they start making other people have a bad time because they're not playing gender game the way this person wants everyone to play it.
Right. I mean, like, it has to be what's right for you, and, like, not really anything bigger than that. Because once it becomes anything bigger than that, it becomes like you don't have the data or the numbers to support that what you're doing is useful at all. Like, we can agree that, like, having stronger arms will allow you to like lift bigger things. And like
Sure.
that's about it. There's no there's no sort of like inherent like body type.
If
You
I were
know,
now,
people are born looking differently,
yeah,
and that is not. And if you have like in your mind's eye the person that you want to look like, that's and you take steps to look that way, then that is what is right for you, and it isn't necessarily what's right for literally anyone else. I think there's
um,
an issue with wanting to be a really good man because there's subjective power afforded that even if you don't, well, yes, for sure, right? Like we live in a society where like being born a man and being seen as a man allows you to move in certain spaces in certain ways, provides you untold and unseen benefits. Like if
yeah.
you want,
It has that's a dangerous, like, man is such a powerful role in a game that everyone is like to some degree forced to participate in, that it's when I say it's okay to do it, like, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with like wanting to play any role in a game as long as you're doing so in a way that is like cognizant of your impact on the people around you. Like, man is such a powerful role that like you have to dabble in it very carefully, or you will like easily accidentally be participating in misogyny, etc. Like trans men, I observe that in trans men all the time. Like these are people who are viscerally aware of like gender roles and like misogyny, the impacts of misogyny. They know male privilege and they know the other side of it. And but still a lot of trans men when they transition will ironically play with male privilege and with masculinity, and frequently accidentally slip into like genuinely enjoying and indulging in male privilege or misogyny, and then like have to constantly be catching themselves. Like it's a slippery, that's a particularly slippery game.
yeah, I mean, it's addictive for a reason, right? like
Yeah.
Mhm.
like it doesn't exist because it's like not useful, or at least not like yeah, addictive is well it
Paging Dr. Freud.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um
But like
yeah.
the answer simply must be to give said privilege to everyone, right? Because if instead of like you bring everyone up, you don't want to push to everyone. You don't want to like take. You don't want to take away the. How do I put this? Like you want everyone to be able to walk through the world with the unearned confidence of like a white man, and feel like things will work out for them.
Well, I
Like
I
you
don't
want
think
everyone to be like acting and like
I don't think that's true, because I think that the unearned confidence of the white man isn't just confidence, but an assumption of superiority.
I'm going to
Like I
cut you
think
off there,
that,
sir, because I think that I have something to contribute.
yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. But
No,
I,
yeah.
yeah,
I guess what I mean is like you want
I know what
I
you mean.
I
I'm just
don't
like,
want the game to be rigged against anyone.
yes,
Well, actually, yeah, I do. I want the game to be rigged so that it's very easy for everyone.
everyone should have fun.
I want a game
Yeah,
where
yeah.
everyone shows up to the Monopoly bank and just
That
takes all the
gets
money they
that
want,
gets
which is
this
not
point by fire, and in my opinion, this is the same thing. Like capitalism is just one of these games, or like non-consensual games, where money equals points. It becomes our easy value system, so we don't have to actually think about like what living a good life or being a good person means. And when you have like when the system has the ability to just say like, oh, that debt, it's actually better if we just erase. We're going to patch that debt, actually, because that we decided that debt was bad for the fun of our game system. And then people have to be like, but capitalism isn't a game system that's arbitrary and can be patched. This is real.
right.
It's the only thing that makes my life and all my suffering like meaningful.
It's like, yeah, no, we can only patch corporate debt.
Well, because
Can't.
those are people who like know that they're playing a game.
Right.
Like,
As are like crypto pump and dump schemers,
yeah.
where like fully just like, I'm going to get mine at everyone's expense. This is zero sum thing.
To like sort of like not shit, but I was talking with some friends about the like Joe Rogans of the world and all of that, and like the appeal to them. I do feel like we've sort of lost the like masculinity, whatever, as a label needs a sort of like bigger and more broad rebrand, because we cannot be like ceding ground to these men that this is what, like, if we're gonna have the concept of masculinity at all, and it seems like in the game that we're playing we are, like, we need a like broader and more inclusive interpretation of it, because this cannot be the version that's like the coolest that everyone is, that like young men are trying to emulate, because that sucks so deeply badly. It's like it is what was part of what was scary about the last election, was you saw like this huge swing in young men for Trump, and it's like, well, how much of this is that this is what they think is cool? How much of this is that like liberal governments told them they had to wear masks all the time and yelled at them when they didn't? Like, it's complicated, right? Like it's a lot of things, but we need a version of like of masculinity that is like actually cool and actually fun, and not whatever the fuck these dudes are doing.
I don't know how you get that in the world of social media. Like, I don't think that it is a coincidence that with the rise of social media and algorithmically pumped content and like hyper short form algorithmic content, that we also see an increase in like a fascist, anti-intellectual, anti-complexity, anti-nuance, pro-simplicity, like rot infesting our society.
Well, I mean, I will grant you that if all of the, social media companies are owned and operated by people that only put forward the stuff that is like useful to them, then yes, because that's not like an open playing field. But I will say that like my algorithm doesn't have those people in it. So like that content is out there. Those people are out there. And
Yeah, there are people even on those formats and in our culture generally, and I count the folks in this thing among them, like
not
storming.
me. I'm problematic. We've decided.
Yeah, we decided that Zach is actually
someone clip that.
He's out. But storming the gates of this culture and at least providing some sort of model of an alternative, a more emancipatory, inclusive, nuanced version of that performance. And hopefully that is inspiring to someone somewhere. Not Zach though. He is
he's problem Zackic, as we
yeah.
And just to be clear, only clip that if you never ever want to see me on this stream ever again. It's totally your call.
A lot of power you've given them.
Totally your call.
So you can see, like, but Zach, there are people making that content, of course, but like we've been talking about it for an hour, and an hour of saying like, well, shit's complicated and weird and nuanced, and like the things you care about and think matter, like maybe don't, and maybe like blah blah blah. Like, and I'm not saying it's not good content. I'm saying though that that has a lot less TikTok, Instagram reel like momentum than someone saying, here's 3 simple things you can do to become more of a man today.
For sure, but like what we're doing is school, right? Like this is like lecture series. There are like men out there who's like, here are 3 ways that you can sew a dope hat. And
That's
like
true.
That's brain breaking to people like Joe Rogan, right? Like, here are 3 ways that you can mix the best fucking Cosmo you've ever had in your life. Like, there's no reason why you cannot bring bro energy to the many things that real men are interested in and do that do
That's
not
true.
conform.
It's absurd. It's absurd yet true that there is something somehow radical about any person pursuing a wild hair interest sincerely and with no anxiety or self-flagellation, and we do LARPs. So
yes, that's what I'm saying. It's like that is my message. Like, the thing that I'm trying to like message is the wrong word, but like the way that I and most of the people that I know, men, are living their lives, it's like, yeah, just go by example. You can be like being a man. We had this comment on Off Book, my podcast, a while back, where someone was like, Zach was talking about how he really likes rom-coms, and it didn't occur to me that that was a thing that it was okay for men to like, and it like broke my heart because like this is just the world that like I'm very lucky, right? Like I was raised by a family who I could have been literally anything and they would be thrilled, as noted by the fact that I'm an improviser and they still talk to me. And not everyone has that, and not everyone grows up in like, you know, Santa Barbara, California, which is like, but I do think that part of the strength of the internet, both its strength and its weakness, right, is that you can find a group of people that are already telling you what you want to hear, but you can also find a group of people that are into whatever you are into. So like if you feel isolated because like you're a man, like a guy who loves, you know, ballet, or a guy who loves making fancy hats. I don't know why I keep bringing up hats. I'm trying to think of things that are like counterintuitive to what like we think of as okay to like as a man, right? If you want to do floral arrangements, whatever. Like there's thousands of people just like you, and it doesn't mean anything other than the fact that you like this thing. That's all it means. It's not tied to anything else about you. And like that's where the wheels come off all of the anti-trans arguments, right? Is that it's like that it means anything other than this is what is right for this person.
So I have a sort of a soft pivot away from this topic. So I want to pitch it to Clint or Ross before we move on from these ideas. If y'all have anything to add here.
Sorry,
to pivot away. No, I feel.
Before I pivoted, I didn't want to.
No. I co-sign what Zach said there. I think that's hopefully what we're all attempting to do in some small way. And I like this fire and comment in the chat, which is why it's important to actively create and contribute to a community that supports what you want to see in the world. And I try to. I think all of us in some way try to do this. Not in any sort of like that we are the rebellion, but it's hard for it not to feel a little bit like that in the face of this cultural current.
Yeah, that living authentically is potentially
somehow
of rebellion is like wild, but also good news because it's like, well, in some ways it's going to be easy. You just have to do what you want to do.
You just have the courage to like have interests and do them authentically.
Yeah.
What's your pivot, Sarah?
Well, Clint, did you have anything else in this subject line?
I stopped listening. I've been watching Legion of Skanks clips.
Oh, that's what I assumed.
I don't know what that is. How much will it break my internet if I Google it?
I can see it reflected in your eyes.
Don't do it. I think Clint's going to try to kill Tony.
Exactly.
I don't know what that is either, Zach. So my pivot is like, because I could sit here and point at examples of this like game idea forever. But the pivot is now that I've in my show, because we're really what we're talking through is my show here. Now that I've made this point and I've convinced the audience to be with me on this ride, everything really kind of about culture and society is a game, and a lot of us aren't consensually playing it. And now the flip pivot is that like that's not actually true. It's actually what is wrong with a lot of how trans people have been talked about on the left, the RuPaulification of all of this, which is itself an oversimplification of a very complex idea. Judith Butler writes a famously impenetrable tome called Gender Trouble, and introduces this idea of gender as a performance. And soon you have people like RuPaul going around talk shows saying like, well, you're born naked, the rest is just drag. And that becomes, whether directly quoting him or just this idea of like all gender is performance and therefore fake, that becomes by a lot of allies, well-meaning allies on the left, like accepted wisdom. And my problem with that, and Judith Butler like acknowledges this problem in their most recent book from last year. They were like, yeah, I kind of disavow a lot of what I said in that book, or I want to like add nuance to it. If it's all fake and just performance, why do I care so much? Right?
Yeah,
Why is it important to me to be woman? Why would I subject myself to the suffering of being a trans woman now? You know, clearly there's more than just performance. It's like the game, that woman is the game, but why do I want to play the role of woman and not man? Is something real that is not itself just like an arbitrary performance. And I think it's so easy to lose that side of it. And like once you do lose that side of it, people on the right have an easier time, not even like propagandizing, faking, easier time misunderstanding. Like, well, why are you doing this? Like, if it's all, if in your mind it's all performance and fake, right? Then you living as woman, being a trans woman, causing all this trouble, wanting to get into women's bathrooms, wanting me to call you she, her, like, that's you being a dick. That's you, like, intentionally breaking the etiquette of our shared gender game. That's you being a little jester troll and like fucking with me. And they don't see it as a like a true, authentic, good faith, like attempt to communicate something real and important and internal.
Yeah, I feel like I heard you talk about this once. I feel like on maybe on something you posted online, Sarah, and it was something that had swum into my head as somebody who had like back in college had absorbed like super potted Judith Butler's gender as performance kind of. That was really all I took away, but had the same sort of thing. Like if this kind of arcing idea that's building momentum in this academic corpus is that this is all performance, that there is nothing quote unquote essential about gender, then is becoming trans in those terms regressive somehow because you're staking out an essential position in something that we're trying to kind of dismantle entirely. And so you talking about this is really interesting because that I feel like is the tricky thing of like interrogating gender in this way, but then returning to, no, this is an authentic expression. How do we bridge those?
And that has been an accusation levied at trans people for decades now. Like, modern TERFs are like a fascist propaganda mouthpiece who've been like totally denuancified. But like the OG real trans exclusionary radical feminists, like the feminists writing in the 70s and participating in hardcore revolutionary feminist intellectual culture at the time, like the cis ones did see like a lot of trans women in that way. You're totally disrupting the project here. Like, why isn't it okay to be a boy who likes to wear dresses and wear makeup and like be feminine? Like, what you're doing is re-essentializing what we've been working so hard to deconstruct. And that like was the origin of a lot of strife between like trans women and cis women, even in revolutionary circles. And you also see the same thing with like a lot of non-binary people will look at binary trans people, and like a non-binary trans person is someone who's, you know, rejecting the binary altogether, and they will see binary trans people who have aligned themselves with one pole of the binary and say like what you're doing is regressive. The flip side of that is that a lot of binary trans people historically have been complete assholes to non-binary people, because you have a lot of like genuinely regressive trans women and trans men who, like, because what they actually want is just to change the role they're playing in gender game and not disrupt game altogether. Like, they don't actually want to think about the game and stuff. They just want to say like, I'm that kind of player. And so they have the exact same reaction that cis people do when non-binary come and say like, well, I'm neither. I'm content being neither. And they say like, well, you can't be content being neither because it's actually like caused me so much pain that I wasn't that other one, or that I'm not this one, and that I had to do all this shit to become this role. And you doing that is like a defiance of my struggle. And then like, you know, that was more early 2000s issue online. But so now what does it mean for me as someone who does genuinely recognize gender as this kind of game-like system that we're all forced into non-consensually? Like, recognize the arbitrariness, recognize the ways in which it is malleable and has changed, etc., etc., etc. Why do I say I'm a woman? Like, when I started law school, when I was 29, I'd been a trans woman who had been out for a few years, and I had a completely new cultural context, people I didn't know, and I was thinking about this. So I entered that new community and said, I'll be non-binary here. I'll use it as an opportunity to get empirical evidence. And I introduced myself using they, them pronouns as being non-binary. You know, well, my professors would call me Mix Kaplan. And I did that for like a year. And then I was like, you know, it just doesn't feel right to me. So I went back and like, I still don't understand why. And part of it is that it's definitely tied to sex for me. Like I consider myself more of a transsexual than a transgender person. Like, as far as the gendered elements go, like, yeah, I would have been totally happy being like a feminine boy who wears dresses and whatever. Like, I don't try for hardcore femininity. I don't modulate my voice to sound femme. Like, I don't wear makeup most days. I get misgendered constantly all the time, and I'm kind of okay with that. What I do desperately want and have always wanted is a vagina. If that weren't the case, if I didn't have a sense of like fundamental, unignorable bodily wrongness, then maybe I would have just been a feminine guy. I don't know. But then you start to get into questions of like, okay, so if you associate vagina with woman, isn't that the whole regressive problem? Right? And like, Julia Serrano is a trans essayist who has an idea called unconscious sex, and she would say like a lot of a lot of what we're doing when we play gender game is trying to communicate through the language, the shared language of the game, which is all arbitrary cultural stuff. We're trying to communicate like our genuine unconscious sex to each other. That's what we want to do. And I mean, it's like not a clean thing. Like that's part of why I don't have a thesis for my show is that I think it's fucking messy.
It's so complicated. Yeah. That's an interesting way of like getting at it though, what you just described. And I think for like, I mean, and you've had to, just because of this position, had to grapple with these questions so deeply in a way that where the conventional societal game feels a little bit closer to the bone for example, my expression of myself. So it's not incumbent upon me, it was not thrust upon me to have these sort of like internal dialogues as much. And to like, and so, yeah, I like what Clancy says here. Like, I just try to trust people to know who they are. Like, just coming at it from a compassionate and like place of humility.
I mean, I think
goes
that's
a long
the correct
way.
Etiquette. Like,
that's a question of etiquette, though. Yeah,
someone tells me their pronouns, their identity. I think it is just polite in this shared cultural chaos to like trust them when they're identifying something about themselves.
Because we do it all. I mean, like, this is a little reductive, but like we do it all the time. If someone comes up to me and is like, "Hi, my name is Dana," no part of my brain is like, "Well, hold on." Is it though? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Has your name been Dana since the moment of conception?
Since always? Like, did it ever change?
Yeah.
And if so, like, what is that? Like, all of it, it's just like no one knows. No one knows.
I saw you from across the room and you didn't look like a Dana, so I'm not going to acknowledge that.
Right, and it also doesn't take into account just how much everyone changes all the time, day to day and year to year, place to place.
Mm-hmm.
How full of multitudes we are.
Right, and obviously it's more complicated because like we don't have a general societal understanding of what a Dana is, but like but in some ways it's not, right? Because no one knows who you are better than you. And that doesn't mean that you have to know exactly who you are, but if you don't, but like other people sure as fuck don't know better than you do. So like the fact that anyone, it is the absolute height of lunacy and sort of, what's my, it's too early. My vocabulary is failing me, but for someone to point to a stranger and be like, I know more about who you are at the core of your being, person I've never met, but am looking at right now on the street, than you do, is so fucking crazy. And like the part that we get away from is that we have like decided to live in a society where it's acceptable to treat strangers in this way, which is just absolutely unconscionable. And then there's the other thing that Sarah, that you and I have talked about, which is like, okay, well, how much of this trans panic comes from people that feel it deeply, and how much of it is being peddled by people that want us to focus on that instead of the fucking billionaire class who's looting everything around us. It's like, it's a Jews and the Holocaust thing. It's like, how much of it is Hitler hates Jews and how much of it is like, you know, it would be pretty politically convenient for us to manipulate the German economy right now. Like,
I mean, I think either way, like, sure, like, why do people, like, Donald Trump just did a thing where he was talking about like, and we just signed an executive order mandating that there are only two genders,
right.
And he goes on this, but he goes on this thing afterwards that I think is super telling, where he's like, and like, is there anybody in here who actually disagrees with that? Like, this is like a 98% issue. Like, the Democrats are over there fighting for this like 2% losing issue, you know? Like, why are they doing that? And like, your Donald Trumps, for them, it is game, right? These are cards they're playing in games where they don't actually care. But I also do think, in addition to that, it's like, but why is this such an effective play? Like,
Yeah,
why does this
right.
distract from the billionaires?
And the effects are very real. Like, let me be
For
clear.
sure.
Like
Of
like the
course.
damage is real. I just think that like it is both important to have these conversations to dissect why we as humans are so susceptible to othering as a form of like propaganda and manipulation, and to remember that while that we can like walk and chew gun at the same time. Like, we can both be like, it's wild that y'all are treating trans people this way, and we see what you're fucking doing, billionaires.
We see you.
Like,
We see you,
like,
yeah.
Sure. But I 100% think that's true. I'm in this show mostly interested in like, what is it about human psychology? What are the vulnerabilities of human psychology that makes some people so susceptible to this kind of thing?
yeah.
And like, I took a class in college called Philosophy of Race and Gender, and the ways that like race and gender are similar and the ways that they're different is really interesting. Like, clearly race exists in a similar way as this, in a similar game like way, and at the same time, the people on the right love bringing it up, like, well, why can't you be transracial, right? And my guess, as a white person taking a wild stab at it, is that like, the difference is that gender, man or woman, are roles we play to communicate some unconscious sex that only we know about. And like, but we are also womaned and manned by other people based on what they think our sex should be. I think race doesn't have that unconscious something element. Like, if you can't be transracial, it's because there's nothing to like reassert. Like, a race is a thing that is done to you by the society that you're in, and a person who is on an island by themselves isn't white or black or Asian. Like, those terms are meaningless outside of the context of a culture. Whereas if I were on a desert island by myself, I would still want a vagina. Like, that would still feel important to me. And that's the main difference I draw at it. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Clint, because you're our one non-white person on this stream.
Yeah, speak for everyone. Speak for everyone.
Yes.
Speak for everyone.
Well, we do get into, this is going to get sticky, and I refuse to speak as a representative.
Of course, yeah. But as Clint,
I have been witness to the difficulty that specifically the American communities of color, to which I have any like connection or insight, have had their own issues around trans and gender, but politically, with regard to how the cultural simulation and civil rights therein interconnect, and they are like, it's frequently like ugly and difficult, and that's can sometimes be in the case where like people are even in good faith, it can still feel ugly and difficult. So this is not making your show any easier. If you wanted to add race just to really blow this out,
I want to be really clear. I'm not touching race at all in my show.
I think Sarah's doing a whole show on race.
Wow.
Well, where's your Chappelle bit? Because I think that's an important part of this conversation, right?
Yeah, but like that's the problem with my show. Again, like that's the whole point of my show, is that like everything is connected. But like it is. It's all one issue.
I mean, I have a small theory about what makes people so susceptible to both like racial fear mongering and trans fear mongering, and it's poverty and scarcity.
There you go. Yeah, I mean that's underlies a lot of things. Sort of.
Right, which is just me being like, guys, like all of it is just, you know, I took, you know, one class in college that was talking about like the Asian minority myth, and it's like pretty well documented that something that happened in our history, which was like, well, here's how we, like the American white ruling class, are going to pit these people against each other. We're going to tell Asian Americans that they are superior to Black people, and we're going to tell Black people that they're more American than Asians, and then we're going to let them go, and they will do the work for us, and so for all of this feels
next thing you know, Koreatown's on fire.
Right. So you know what makes people really stay in their own fucking lane and not care so much about what other people are doing with their lives is if they're not worried about where their next meal is going to come from, and not looking for someone to blame for their current troubles, which is almost always, you know, capitalism.
Yeah. It's like, that all this stuff in a way is like a return of the repressed, of people being unable to look at their material conditions in the face.
Sorry, it's the model minority myth, as Clancy has pointed out. I forget, I don't know what I called it, but that is what it's called.
I want to say that we're probably getting close to the end of this. And so Sarah, I feel like you've got a lot to think about.
The show is in 3 days, and
I'm not any closer to understanding exactly how you're going to tie all those threads together. I see a big tangled ball of string in my mind, but I feel like you've got 6 one-person shows in there.
Have you considered just doing like, I don't know, Hello Dolly? Because that one's written already.
Yeah, that would really.
You could just do that by yourself.
Maybe you could just write some ukulele songs about contemporary awkward problems.
Okay, yeah, I could. Okay, do you know what pains me?
Before we leave, I want to talk about novelty songs. Before we get out of here.
I think before we go, we should all do what we did the first time. Just briefly, what's a cultural thing that you like? You've called novelty songs. I think I know what you're talking about, and I can't wait to hear it.
I was invited to an event yesterday morning of a group I did not know existed, and now I am very seriously considering joining, of a thing called the LA Breakfast Club, which is like a civic organization along the lines of a Rotarian or a Shriner or something like that. And they were having an event celebrating Dr. Demento's 84th birthday.
Whoa.
Yes.
And it required me to go to a breakfast at 7 a.m. where I got to get introduced to this frankly insane organization who could not be more excited to celebrate Dr. Demento and sort of the culture of being novelty demented, which strikes me as it was so close to like new metal. I'm fucking insane. Kind of stuff.
Yes.
Except it's poisoning pigeons in the park.
Yeah,
exactly.
The line between fish heads and coal chamber, very, very
for sure. But
Oh,
from
yeah.
from 7 a.m. till 9:30 a.m., I sat in a room with an 84-year-old Dr. Demento, who's
Oh, he was there.
He was fully there.
Oh, that's incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah. He got up to give a speech, but the speech was just like a segment from his show where he said, and Bing Crosby in 1947 wrote this song about the streets of Los Angeles. He'd play the whole song in its entirety, and we would all sit there
What a guy.
with our cold eggs listening to this song.
For those in the chat who don't know, one of Dr. Demento's biggest like claims to fame is that he broke Weird Al into like the larger medium.
Yeah.
Weird Al sent a video that was played thanking Dr. Demento for his importance in his life and career.
Oh.
But I feel like I'm constantly pointing out to this audience how old I am. I'm afraid no one knows who Dr. Demento is. Is that possible?
Well, he's on the like periphery. There it is. He's on the periphery of like even people that I would know about, and only because I'm such like a Weird Al diehard.
Yeah.
I think if not for Weird Al, I think I might have missed him entirely.
We're all in some way musical comedy people, and Dr. Demento is like a cornerstone of American musical comedy, an institution of himself.
And those folk
and I
all
don't
came out to honor him that day. Like members of the Fireside Theater spoke. A literal video from Michael McKean backstage at Glengarry Glen Ross sent in. Like, it was pretty incredible. And anyway, I'm joining this breakfast club. If anybody wants to join me, it's going to be the best.
I think I have friends that are in it already. It's like in my neighborhood.
It's very much in your neighborhood. It's Wednesdays at 7 a.m. There's a secret handshake. You have to learn a bunch of songs. I stole one of the.
Don't show it on stream. Don't show it on stream.
It's okay. It's okay.
They're gonna come after you.
But it's full of all the
shrine of friendship
symbology of
I love the Breakfast Club.
Awesome.
It's really good.
They insist on calling you, like, they seem to have a thing where you walk up and you say hello ham, and the other person says hello eggs. Like, there's a whole bunch. It's everything I wanted from literally a conversation I just had with Ross and Sarah. The reason I did not become a Mason. This is all the good stuff and none of the bad stuff.
Amazing. I'm so glad you found this.
Hey, you found your
And it's
Masons.
over by 9 a.m. It's the best thing that's ever happened.
So, Clint, not to be continually dragging this back into the depths of nitty-gritty philosophy bullshit.
Do it.
Thank you for talking about that, because if I have a conclusion, I want to, because we're about to end, so I want to leave our audience here with a little bit of like, what are my thoughts then ultimately?
Hi, Jill.
Hey, Jill.
Hi, Jill.
Like Jill, you missed it.
Do I know what a woman is? No. Do I know exactly why it's so important to me to be a woman? I don't. It's just a thing that I feel. However, in thinking about all this and thinking about games, thinking about fascism, thinking about genders, blah, 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 my biggest takeaway is that, like, games are vital. Like, humans are not rational creatures. We are play creatures. We want to be constantly engaging in play with each other. It is how we actually communicate, to the extent, like, to the point where language itself really is a game that we all play and abide by. The problem we have socially, like the problems that derive from human society and not from like physical stuff like famine or whatever, I think usually happen when one party forgets that what they're doing is playing a game. The Breakfast Club sounds really fun. And the reason it sounds fun is because I think we all assume that everyone participating in those rituals is doing so playfully. However, those rituals themselves are not actually any different from the kinds of rituals practiced by an esoteric Nazi or like a witch-burning Christian house of worship in the 1600s. The difference is that, like, if someone comes into this diner wherever you're meeting and someone walks up to them and says, hello, ham, and they don't know the proper response is hello, eggs, that you all will say, this is simply not a player in our game. We will leave them alone. Whereas an esoteric Nazi or a 17th century Christian will say, you don't know the rules of our game. But I'm not playing a game. This is reality. This is fundamentally what matters. This is the source of all good and evil. This is the source of my meaning and identity as a human being. And the fact that you're refusing to play my game, well, I either have to accept that what I'm doing is a game that I've entered willingly and could leave and that other people don't have to play it, or I have to kill you because you're a direct threat to this game, which has become the foundation of my sense of self. And that's what it all comes back.
The Breakfast Club have mentioned full-on physical attacks on the Rotarians. So
Yeah, good.
I'm not wrong.
Good. Yeah.
I love that, Sarah. I feel like as far as that comes close to the first thing I've heard that is a real like thesis statement for the show. I'm looking forward to seeing this thing.
Yeah. Are you going to be there?
On the 6th?
Oh,
I plan to.
6, hell yeah.
I saw something in the chat of like, what is Ross reading?
Oh yeah,
So
they always Clerk Donk wants to know.
Unless someone has something to add, I might take us out with this.
Please.
So what I'm reading is, back during the pandemic, I started reading In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust. I'm now I'm on the 5th book of the sequence. This is The Prisoner. This is also known as the Roman d'Albertine, because we're getting into the section where he's talking about his love for the young woman Albertine. But I think that this is actually, there's a passage in here that I flagged because I thought it was really interesting, and it's apropos to what we were talking about today. Of within us there are deep
two wolves,
and also maybe 3 wolves, maybe hundreds of wolves.
Whoa!
Deep expressions of ourselves, like we are populated with selves, ones we leave behind, ones we lose touch with, and some that tenaciously remain within us. Here's my boy Marcel. Of all the persons who make up our individual selves, the most apparent are not the most essential. When illness has eliminated them one by one, there will survive in me 2 or 3, the hardest to kill off, and notably one, a philosopher who is happy only when he has discovered between 2 works of art or between 2 sensations a common factor. But sometimes I wonder if the last of all will not be the little man, very much like another, who loves the sun. I'm going to speed on here. I feel that on my deathbed, when all my other eyes are already gone, if there's a blink of sun while I am drawing my last breaths, the little barometer man will be delighted and will take off his hood and sing, "Ah, the sun at last." Like that we are populated with a dramatis personae that we lose touch with, some of which we are only dimly aware of. And maybe the most essential are the ones we're least aware of. And who will be the last one that we're in touch with when the lights go out?
Oh no.
Ross, did I tell you I once dated a plural system?
You'll learn more about that next time.
I that's amazing. I should read those books. Zach, final takeaway?
You should read those books instead of dumping yourself into hardcore right-wing media, Sarah. That's what I want for you. Or if
when
you
my
want...
show is done.
Yeah. Contemplate a Madeleine and not Matt Walsh.
I'm reading the T Kingfisher series right now. The first book in the series is called Paladin's Grace. It's great. It was described to me as sort of romantasy with better writing, and it's sort of not, because it is probably better writing, but it's not like hardcore romantasy. It's like it's a fantasy with some romance elements. It is not smutty at all, and it's great. So Paladin's Grace is the first book, and I'm on the second one, Paladin's Strength by T Kingfisher, and they rock.
Nice.
By T Kingfisher and The Rock?
Yes, it's a collab between T Kingfisher and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Taking a break from.
Oh no. Okay.
On our way out, Clorp Donk asked if there's gonna be more Chill Touch shows. The answer is yes.
Yes, indeed.
The answer is yes.
In fact, we can reveal. It may be now. It can be told There we have another one at Upright Citizens Brigade on the books.
It's so far away.
It's so far
So
away
far.
that it's
April
not on the tip of
6th.
my tongue.
For my little improv brain, that's so far in the future as to not exist.
Yeah,
Agreed.
it's on Saturday, May 31st
Oh,
at 7
God.
p.m. May 31st. That's the only one we know of, but there may be one in the intervening time. Watch this space and all of our social media to see when it happens again, because it may be happening before that, but we know for sure it's going to be happening on May 31st. So check it out, live or in the internet.
In the meantime, join the Chill Touch Discord. You can come hang out with us and talk about nerd stuff and make new friends. Because that's the game I'm selling you is friends. And that's how I'm trying to manipulate you as an audience by encouraging a parasocial relationship with me. And otherwise, you can catch us doing more live streams. It might pivot from Thursdays to Wednesdays or a different day of the week because Mary Lou just started recording a new actual play podcast on Thursdays at this time. So be on the lookout. We'll let you know the new time if it changes. And otherwise, guys, Zach, thanks so much for being here. Oh, Zach, did we want to formally announce that Chill Touch has a new member of the squad?
Oh yeah, I've done more. I've done the majority of your shows so far, right?
Yeah,
You've done the majority now.
Done the majority.
Yeah.
So we're now a four-hander.
Yeah.
So
We've added a fifth Beatle.
Yeah. Otherwise, everyone, thanks so much for it's so blurry. Thanks so much for joining us here on this live stream. You've made our morning fun. Stay chill. Stay touched. Bye.